Hey y'all! So, a lot of you did not feel that my last video was very well done. I took your feedback to heart, and here I'm trying to convey everything a little bit better. This is my direct comparison of Mass Effect Andromeda and BioWare's new IP Anthem. In this video, we're going to explore and fully detail the differences that each of the games possesses, and hopefully answer whether Anthem is worth your time. So, please stick around. My name is Adore. Thanks for taking the time to watch my video. Given the many choices you have in this incredibly saturated market, which is video gaming in 2019, it really means so very much to me. Please sit back, relax, and let me be your guide today. Presentation and graphics. Mass Effect Andromeda was a beautiful game when it released in March of 2017, bringing even the greatest of PC hardware to its knees. Planned originally as a procedurally generated universe, much like the original Lie that is No Man's Sky, this plan was scrapped late into development, forcing developers to create several unique planets and biomes within a very short period of time before the game released. This significantly affected the end product, but there is no question that this game still remains one of the most gorgeous to behold. Anthem feels like the culmination of everything BioWare has previously worked on, promising its most diverse and realized world ever, with the further promise that its main planet will have its play area greatly expanded upon and built up over time. Most of Anthem currently composes of a large, lush jungle, filled with tombs and ruins, no less created by the destruction that has been wrought upon the world due to the Anthem of creation. Vegetation density is on another level in this game, with dense forests, plants, and flowers littering the ground every which way that you look. Played on Ultra, Anthem is truly something to marvel at. Mountains with flowing waterfalls that flow into an abyss of mystery, floating rock-like structures much like something we've seen in the world of Avatar. By contrast, Mass Effect Andromeda populated its many planets with vast open deserts, devoid of much vegetation or floral variety. There were certainly a few planets that broke with this mold and offered small jungle spaces and extra verticality. However, Anthem pretty much demands for this, given its major difference in traversal mechanics, but more on that in just a minute. Despite its reliance on large open spaces in its world design, many of Mass Effect's arenas and fighting gauntlets consisted of small close-quarters fights, within futuristic mechanical tombs and small fortresses strewn across its many large environments. These places certainly convey a different tone and mood to the game, but often are composed of recycled assets and elements. To say that Mass Effect's art direction in Andromeda begins to wane and bore even the most enthusiastic fan would be a major understatement. Especially given that the game has the gall to force you to trudge through the same largely unchanged tomb configurations all throughout. Anthem, while still feeling largely linear in terms of actual firefights, offers significantly more options for tackling its many diverse encounters. But I'm getting ahead of myself, as any talk of combat is quite a ways away in this direct comparison. Lighting in Anthem is a huge step up from Mass Effect in my opinion, offering considerably more realistic global illumination and shadow techniques. Feeling more dense and populated with realistic wildlife and enemy faction locations. Ambient occlusion, which approximates lighting conditions with respect to bright light and specific surface parts, should absolutely be left on its highest setting, as lowering it will significantly affect the realism of Anthem's world. I made a comparison video yesterday that shows the difference between all of the graphical presets, from low to ultra, as well as motion blur and its effect on movement. You can find it by clicking the links in this video, and I'll also leave a link in the video description below for your convenience. Movement and traversal. Anthem, as a co-op looter shooter, has one major specific advantage over its competitors, and that is just how good the game actually feels. Thanks in part to its excellent movement mechanics and combat, which go hand in hand to create the thrill ride that is exploring the world of Anthem. It is sheer joy the first moment you step off the ledge of Fort Tarsis and engage your jetpack, resulting in an accompanying meaty sound as you take off in a flurry of sparks. Fully at your command, you can dive huge distances, cooling down the exosuit that functions as your skin in Anthem, right down to the world-class customization options that Anthem offers you. More customization in a while, but it certainly does not disappoint. As you fly, this game will feel more like a city of heroes than the restrictive gameplay experience you're accustomed to in the Mass Effect and Dragon Age games of old. Despite Andromeda offering you a jetpack as well, you were restricted to simple hops, which gave a short-lived but welcome sense of verticality to the encounters. That is all gone and replaced with total freedom, apart from an ever-present cooldown bar that will completely fill and send you hurtling towards the ground should even a stray fire explosion clip you. Speaking of this, Anthem is not without its own obstacles while flying. You are not an invincible flying machine, rather an expertly crafted super soldier. Vulnerability in flight situations serves to add to the tension and overall magic that Anthem injects into you. Like a drug, it keeps you playing without even talking about the loot hooks it incessantly impales you with. Fire explosions, rockets, sniper rounds, fists, all of these can down even the most agile javelin pilot. However, the tools available to you are also vast, allowing you to barrel roll incoming fire and with clever timing of an ultimate attack, stave off even the most crushing blow. In the earlier Mass Effect games, your only option, should enemies close the distance and surround you, was to quickly flee and hope that your shields hold out, but in Andromeda you had the added ability to jump via your jetpack. Out of harm's way, of course. This was a controversial change, but the one thing I can say objectively is that it at least gave you an extra fighting chance if you found yourself in such an unfortunate situation. It, in my opinion, however, did feel a bit ridiculous and led to another game following Halo that also allowed you to bunny hop to win. Nothing feels so silly in Anthem, not even close. While you have the same ability to jump to avoid enemies and attacks, many enemies can fly and flank you from all directions. They are each armed with formidable attacks and utility options of their own. Some send out exploding drones, and others have hyper-accurate laser targeting sniper rifles. Where Andromeda made up for weak movement options, it allowed exploration of its large but mostly empty worlds with a vehicle of its own, called the Nomad. This was a tank which was modeled after the beloved Mako from the original Mass Effect. Now, however, it drives beautifully, hugging corners and terrain the way you would expect a several-ton monster to behave. It has no guns, however, and so is mostly used to get around quickly and for resource gathering. Enter Anthem, where you can soar through caverns, canyons, and ruins while blasting away at any foe. Fall to the depths of deep lakes and rivers, then jet out like a blue angel, performing a flurry of acrobatic stunts while a spray of water realistically peppers the air. NPC interactions. Without spoiling anything, Anthem contains a good story with respect to other looter shooters that have come before it, but it does pale in comparison to the excellently crafted narratives that BioWare has been known for, and in this way, it is a disappointment. Don't let this deter you from trying Anthem, however, as in my opinion, with it being a service-based game, even better stories are coming, and what is here in terms of plot development, twists and turns is world better than anything Andromeda ever put out. Interacting with the various diverse cast of characters in Fort Tarsis, which serves as your main hub in Anthem, ends up being a major shortcoming for the game, both in sense of tone and accessibility. None of these characters, save a few, even attempt to elevate the stakes that seem dire given opening segments and moments in this game. Most people in the world of Anthem are not concerned with the fate of the world, but rather whether a new fountain is really needed in the town square or various walkways are being swept clean, devoting their lives instead to mundane existences of fighting townspeople over whether or not a foot traffic system is needed. No joke, that's all this guy seems to care about. Does he have a family? Did a Titan eat his lunch last week? I'd really like to know, but the game doesn't allow its characters to be more than one-dimensional set pieces. And many times, it feels more like I'm interacting with a service AI than a flesh and blood human. I still enjoyed that weird encounter with the self-proclaimed janitorial staff, but I expect a lot more depth and dimension in any game that BioWare slaps its name on. I expect it from all developers, but especially such masterclass storytellers. Andromeda fares better here, but not by much. Certainly, its narrative arcs consist of rich characters though. An especially memorable event in Andromeda was when I had to investigate a murder, which turned out to have a very interesting twist at the end, and only if the player took the steps required to sniff out the truth. Few games offer quests with such depth, and I'm very much hoping that this is the rather drab beginnings of a masterpiece with the Anthem, and not its climax. Gameplay. The moment-to-moment action in this game is simply breathtaking. Full disclosure, I've put in over 80 hours into the game. It was released to Origin Premier Access subscription members on February 15th. But that's not counting how much time I played of the alpha and VIP demo or beta versions of Anthem. Certainly at this point, I've put in well over 100 hours into the world of Anthem, and not to fangirl too hard, but I love this game and I want it to succeed in every way possible. I'm probably in the minority, but since the game was announced, it already felt like a game that would scratch a lot of the itches that I have in this saturated gaming climate. I'm not bored, and no, I don't feel that Anthem has gotten a fair shake. Not in Destiny though, and not even in Warframe have I felt this capable and enjoyed combat as much as I have in Anthem. The gameplay here feels dramatically tighter control-wise than Warframe, and offers direct class customization options that in time will absolutely rival Mass Effect. You are your powers. This is a major difference to a game that stunts your ability to feel like a god like Destiny has, with its obsession of stopping its characters from being, quote, overpowered. In Anthem, you're a Venom Sprayer, but you can become a flamethrower nut by donning the Colossus skin, or electrify your surroundings with an aura from the Interceptor skin's melee attack. I say skin because the player character you create in the game is largely irrelevant, besides a few facial differences that you'll never see. Make no mistake, like Warframe, in Anthem, you are your javelin. Customization. Customization is top-notch in Anthem with respect to your various Javelin exoskeletons. You unlock different wear states as you complete various challenges, such as making your Colossus a dirty boy or girl. You can change all of the materials to different metals or cloth variations if you so choose, and the game offers a generous color wheel of sorts at launch. Simply amazing. The only game that might rival Anthem in terms of overall customization options would likely be the juggernaut that Warframe has become. I am in no way disappointed by the customization in Anthem. 10 out of 10. Mass Effect Andromeda also consists of customization options, and is similar to Anthem in this, given various different armor types, color options, light material changes, and lighting. At least in single player this exists, whereas in multiplayer you're only able to adjust the lights, color, and materials as you level up. Still a pretty good customization system to be sure. When discussing the overall gameplay experience in Anthem, something you will likely have heard about is its lack of mission variety. Reddit posts, totaling the hundreds at this point, likely exist to reinforce such a belief or dash your misplaced delusions. So let's talk about that. Does Anthem's mission and quest variety really suck? I'm going to go through a list of the actual different mission types before addressing the controversy surrounding it. This is, of course, my opinion, and something I say about this topic you might heavily disagree with. That's fine. We're all unique individuals with voices that are absolutely welcome at the table, in my eyes. Quests in Anthem require you to always fly to a location to start a mission. That may or may not include flying to various waypoints along the way, however. Missions consist of fairly generic mission types, but largely surpass the options afforded in other looter shooters. There are about 20 missions that I counted in Anthem, if you aren't including side quests. Here is a list of all the things you can expect to do. Defend and capture points from various waves of enemies. That might also include gathering echo items from around the arena. Locate high-value targets and take them out. Those can differ from traditional boss encounters as well as involve multiple stages. One mission has you fighting various lesser Titan mini-bosses before taking on a mammoth Doomsday Titan in a large arena. Locate bombs to place and detonate while defending repairable sentinels. Locate and rescue sentinels and other freelancers from various entanglements. Now, with regard to these, the mission might consist of infiltrating a prison structure and then opening prison cells to save them, or shooting electric cage boxes, which take a considerable amount of bullets to free them. Repair large Strider mobile headquarters from Titans, wildlife, or enemy factions that have captured and disabled them. Most of these are multi-part affairs and are not actually as simplistic as they sound. Restart Anthem machinery. A notable mission that involves investigating through a layered set of quests, a Bermuda Triangle of sorts, where various explorers have gone missing. I won't spoil this at all, but it certainly felt rewarding. Gather echoes to silence enemy spewing mini Anthem of Creation Shaper artifacts. A controversial mission, getting a lot of heat in the interwebs, that switches up the pacing of the game and tasks you with completing various arbitrary challenges to open tombs around the area. When I got to this point in the story, I had most of these completed already, as they appear to be retroactive, and thus I didn't have to spend a lot of time on this, but your results may vary. Engage in large varied boss encounters with raid-light mechanics. These are not generic, but very well crafted boss designs. Kill encampments of enemies, or clear out various caves. Gather resources, open treasure chests, and craft various items. Complete various escalating challenges. Find lit up ruins scattered throughout the area. Solve simple object rotation puzzles. Theory crafting. Yes, I included this. It's a looter shooter. What are you nuts asking me to take it off my list? Go look up what this is. Do it. Just do it. Then come back to this video and let's have a debate about it. I may have missed a few mission types, but this list is already, in my opinion, extensive. You can disagree with anything, of course, but please back it up with good arguments. Tying all of Anthem's missions together is very good voice acting and overall narrative, meaning there is in fact a reason to everything that you're doing in this game. I can't stress enough how much of a difference this makes. If you've played The Division, which is light on story, you will be pleasantly surprised by Anthem. Now, let's discuss the mission variety in Mass Effect Andromeda, which I feel is severely lacking by contrast. Considering that when I play Mass Effect Andromeda, it is mostly within the context of its excellent multiplayer suite, I might miss a few notable mission types experienced throughout the story. Capture the point. This might be one central point or a few around the arena. Carry objects from one end of the map to an extraction point, dubbed Pizza Delivery. Defeat waves of enemies and extract. Investigate ancient mechanical tombs and clear them of enemies. Solve cipher puzzles by playing Sudoku over and over and over again. Kill high-value targets. Defeat generic bosses with little variety. Investigate a twisting murder mystery by talking to various characters and going to the location to search for clues. Gather materials and craft equipment and weapons. Talk to people. Leave one location. Go and talk to another person. Not joking. The well-acted and written narratives that are found in Anthem don't exist in Andromeda's multiplayer, but some missions do have accompanying story arcs when playing Mass Effect Andromeda's campaign. The attacks that I'm currently seeing against Anthem for its lack of mission variety could easily be lobbed at any game these days apart from absolute masterpieces like Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, and Red Dead Redemption. But given BioWare's previous track record, it's absolutely warranted. Powers and abilities. Both Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem make the player character a space magic-wielding god or goddess, and both games have strengths and weaknesses in this regard. Anthem's powers at this time certainly are a little more down-to-earth, and based more in reality, whereas Andromeda delved into more extra-dimensional abilities. This is where both games have stolen my heart. Andromeda allows you to conjure dark energy all around you with the Annihilation Field power, stripping enemies of shields, and buffing the damage that your allies do, depending on how you spec it. Contrasting that, Anthem allows the Colossus to generate coils of electricity when enemies are close, and decimate shields and unprotected enemies. In Mass Effect, you can use biotic abilities to hold enemies in place mid-air, then hurl them against other enemies or off cliff sides. Both games offer a powerful flamethrower, strong against armored targets and capable of suppressing even the strongest enemies through constant torrents of flaming death. Andromeda has powers like Snap Freeze that allow you to encase enemies in ice, freezing them for several seconds. Anthem also offers the player powers that inflict various statuses, such as Freeze. Combining powers and comboing them together, much like in Mass Effect, is all but required to complete Anthem's hardest content. Apart from powers, every character class in Anthem offers a unique melee attack ability. Mass Effect classes had this as well, but none of them ever felt all that powerful, with only a few exceptions. The Colossus in Anthem can pull out a strong shield to bulldoze enemies, or slam the ground around them with good AoE blast damage. They can also run and knock foes to the ground with a momentum-based shield smack. Anthem has a largely dedicated melee class called the Interceptor, with various kicks and slashes thanks to dual daggers, and powers that allow you to propel your body towards enemies a lot like Mass Effect's Biotic Charge. All the while, you're inflicting status effects on enemies and giving yourself a complementary aura. This class feels really great, if not a bit underpowered, and the closest thing Mass Effect came to this would have been something like the N7 Slayer in Mass Effect 3's multiplayer. There are so many powers in both games and endless build variety that I might need to make an entire video series about them, so I'm going to move on to the next topic now, which is enemies and enemy factions. Andromeda has three main enemy factions, the Outlaw, Remnant, and Ket. A fourth Angaran enemy exists, but shares its name with an active ally faction of the Pathfinder character, and as such is less a fourth faction and more just a troop of units that have defected. This enemy type was added into certain missions in Andromeda's multiplayer, and it shows up when playing the hardest tier difficulty content. The Outlaw are your basic run-of-the-mill soldiers, some which utilize biotic abilities of their own, with a few stronger enemies like annoying snipers, rocket-firing mechs, large wolf-like creatures, and flak cannon-wielding Krogan berserkers. Remnant are AI and robotic units with shield-stripping lasers, large plasma-firing tanks that decimate anything in their path with constant machine gun firing patterns, flying melee units, bug-like bots that creep around, and shield-deploying rocket-firing nullifiers, which self-repair. The Ket and final enemy type are integral to the main story, and their origin serves as a main twist. They consist of humanoid monsters, twisted in their appearance and goals for the universe. Grenadier units, energy shotgunners with cloaking mechanisms, giant hulking armored fiends that spit acid and crush you with their charges and severe ground slams, dog-like creatures that turn invisible, and finally, ascendant floating wizards that can one-hit kill you with their death orb attacks. Ungaran soldiers with various enemy types, as mentioned earlier, also show up in some missions. Anthem has several enemy factions as of release, but I imagine BioWare will craft more in the coming months and years. Scorpions, spelled with a K because BioWare wants you to know just how edgy they are a spidery creature with various acid-spitting crawlers. They hide in eggs waiting for unsuspecting prey, but once you encounter them once, you'll know what to do. Being organic and incredibly weak to fire, an element you're never in short supply of, they are probably the easiest of the enemies even on the harder difficulties. They have a queen over them, known as the Swarm Tyrant, which is a boss fight I absolutely loved, but more on bosses in a moment. Another enemy faction in Anthem is the Scars, taking a similar form to humanity. Due to humans being the dominant faction in the world, these insectoid creatures speak a guttural language and use portals to teleport around the battlefield. This means they can flank you. Years ago, during a previous cataclysm, they arrived as something different, but now they sport the more humanoid look. Basic enemy soldiers armed with assault rifles, snipers, and capable of deploying explosive drones and large turret emplacements, they are the base enemy that you as a freelancer in the world of Anthem will encounter. The Scar have some higher tier legendary enemy units with significant health and shields, and a unique gatekeeper colossus like Brute, who shows up in only one of the current 3 stronghold dungeons. There is one other faction called the Outlaw, so mirroring Mass Effect, which I didn't actually do footage for, as they only show up in certain missions and they tend to have units similar to the Dominion. I'm not totally sure how they really function as a faction, so I may need to read some of the lore on that. But with that being out of the way, I'm just going to move on to the final enemy faction that is pretty specific and not connected to the Shaper created enemies or the wildlife you encounter, and they are called the Dominion. These are in fact a faction of freelancers. They split off from the Legion of Dawn after their leader Helena Tarsis died, so they're in fact the creators of the Storm Javelin, and as such you will fight various enemies that resemble yourself and your squad mates. This includes all of the current javelins, but I would assume in time that the Dominion will also dominate any new javelin types that BioWare introduces. This is the faction that you'll be fighting throughout Anthem's evolving story, and they're ruled by the main villain known only as the Monitor. They seek absolute power, and so their main motivation is to harness the power of the Anthem of Creation. Besides fighting rogue javelin units, you'll also have to contend with supernatural-esque creatures called Furies, hulking brutes that encase themselves in shields of dark energy tendrils. There are various other creatures corrupted by the Dominion you will encounter, but the thing for me that makes this faction such an awesome one is that unlike Destiny, you actually end up fighting enemies with the same powers as you, and not just as some anticlimactic boss. Bosses. Most games, especially looter shooters, have boss fights and various encounters with larger-than-life enemies just begging for you to cross their paths. Let's address the largest enemies first. Andromeda has giant worm-like creatures called Architects that must be defeated by destroying vulnerable power cores. I already killed them all, so I'll just use footage in orbit of what they look like. You encounter this enemy 5 times throughout Andromeda's many planets, and each fight is largely the same and connected to a mission. Architects have a large energy cannon, energy fields that shatter your shields, as well as grenades. An Architect can also spawn various remnant units throughout the fight. They drop very valuable materials though, so they're worth fighting. Other bosses in Andromeda include a reoccurring enemy that, in my opinion, never feels like a truly memorable or hard encounter with the Ascendant high tier units I mentioned earlier when I was discussing the Cat faction. as well as a more powerful version of a fiend encountered early in the game, and a Ket-aligned super soldier Krogan. Anthem has several huge towering enemies that I have encountered in my over 80 hours of living in this world. There are Titans, Ursix, Ascari, and of course the aforementioned Swarm Tyrant. There's also one other boss that would factor into my list of Anthem's largest bosses, but I don't want to spoil it here. Titans are giant golems that create large hordes of elemental sprites that chase you and your teammates all around, attacking you with ash, frost, or electric attacks. The sprites are easily downed, but they come in such large groups they can absolutely overwhelm you. Titans also pull large elemental orbs from the ground, and they send them hurtling at you. A hit from them while in flight will likely ground you for some time. Another attack they utilize is creating exploding orbs at your location, and on the highest difficulties these will surely one-shot kill anything that isn't a heavily armored colossus wielding their shield. When the Titan opens its chest, you had best be out of his way, otherwise an elemental beam of energy is going to skewer you quickly. Finding cover, and very quickly, is your only hope if caught off guard. The final attack is when the Titan slams its fist into the ground and creates giant shockwaves of fire. These are usually avoided by jumping or hovering in flight mode, but many times higher plumes of fire will also be generated, and so you're tasked with maneuvering up and down accordingly. This can last for a very long time, and especially on the highest difficulties, it can stunlock you to death. The Ursix is also a formidable foe, but certainly less so than Titans. They are very ape-like in animation and attack patterns, throwing rocks and charging you to get up close, finishing you off with ground slams and heavy slaps. They can also jump very high and close the distance with you even if you tell them, "It's over, Ursix. I have the high ground." Most of the time, Ursix come in pairs or more, and it is in these larger groups that they make for a more dangerous encounter. Ascari are large four-legged tank units that are also organic, meaning that they seem to be infused with the tank itself. They fire rockets and heavy machine guns constantly. They stop only for a moment if you take out certain weak points. They're backed up by large battalions of Scar units, and they can easily stunlock you to oblivion if you're out of cover too long. Most of their attacks are laser guided and home in on targets, meaning that flight is really dangerous around them. They're very slow though and have limited movement, but they still aren't to be trifled with. A particularly hard encounter with Ascari in one of the stronghold dungeons requires additional mechanics, such as disabling shield generators and significantly upgraded unit composition. Not to mention you have to fight in a claustrophobic arena. Finally, Anthem's arachnid boss, sure to give anyone with arachnophobia nightmares, is called the Swarm Tyrant. This huge spidery creature lives within the deepest depths of the Tyrant Mine stronghold, and is here she will make short work of your team by casting webs over you, immobilizing and then crushing you with her lunge attack, or sending in hordes of worker and soldier scorpions to finish you off. This fight is super cinematic. From the moment you fly under her nest and watch her creepily crawl out and down into the arena, before blasting unsuspecting freelancers with acid. This is the closest thing to fighting Shelob from Lord of the Rings, or the Ungoliant from the Silmarillion. Everything about this fight is Tolkien-esque, apart from the sci-fi exosuits and weaponry you possess, of course. Even Skyrim, with its many giant spiders, can't match the awe and spectacle of the Swarm Tyrant boss fight. There are some lesser bosses in Anthem, but these mostly consist of recycled javelin enemies, and are not very noteworthy. Difficulty. To round out this direct comparison between Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, I will now shortly touch on difficulty. However, I do have a video planned to further expand on my thoughts regarding this, and will say right off the bat that Andromeda certainly has Anthem beat here. Sadly, Anthem uses the tried and true but rote difficulty system of so many games before it, and suffers greatly because of it. Nothing will ever be fun about enemies that all, not just specific enemies, but all can one-shot kill you on higher difficulties and become absolute bullet sponges, resulting in you feeling like your weapons are Nerf guns and your powers simply tickle enemies. Every single encounter on higher difficulties, and I tried them all, comprises of the exact same enemy placement, so far as I can tell, mission objectives, and mechanics. All enemies have health and shields buffed to ridiculous levels, and I saw no difference whatsoever in their overall AI intelligence and tactics. This is an incredibly lazy difficulty system to create, and for me, salt is further rubbed in the wound because of the fact that BioWare has done better in the past. Even in Andromeda, enemy variety and composition was changed significantly at the higher difficulties, particularly in multiplayer. On its highest difficulty, called Platinum, players must contend with the entire kitchen sink of enemy factions and unit types. Many times this culminates with even stronger boss units, like a super fast Hydra mech or a heavily armored destroyer called a Progenitor that spawns observer units it replaces constantly. These seek out players and use highly accurate lasers to take down shields very quickly. Round objectives change quite a bit too, due to the increase in enemy variety and size. So much so, in fact, that it's a well-known fact that really only players running characters that can cloak should involve themselves in the pizza delivery and hacking objectives. Nothing like this currently exists in Anthem, but considering BioWare's prior track record, I think it's only a matter of time for them to address this. This isn't exactly a review, although these direct comparison videos contain enough of my thoughts on Anthem that they may very well be my innovative answer to a review. I'm also not really pitting these games against each other. Andromeda does some things very well and completely drops the ball in almost every other category. However, Anthem isn't perfect either, and its more balanced approach to the problems that plagued Andromeda may in fact lead to its downfall. Both games are worth playing in 2019, and I'll certainly be splitting time between them given that I believe they're both going to maintain heavy player bases for a long time to come. Pick up Anthem. Love it for what it is and what it promises to become, not what you wish that it actually was. Then jump into Mass Effect Andromeda, especially on PC, and enjoy one of the best multiplayer wave-based shooters ever crafted. Above all else though, please subscribe to my channel and ring the bell if you like what I'm doing, because if you don't ring the bell, then you won't hear from me very often. Sad face. These videos take a lot of time and hard work. I'm doing everything I can to try to put out quality content that breaks from the norm and offers my own twists and new ideas on the formula. Now that I've built a brand new computer for this exact purpose, I can promise you the frequency with which my content is uploaded will be much more consistent than it was in the past. I have an entire schedule of videos planned. Some of it deals more specifically with Anthem, and other content is sure to surprise you. Don't forget to comment down below with any of your thoughts on Anthem, Mass Effect, or the video, and please let me know how I'm doing. I want to put out content that people love and really build a community that loves and adores gaming and is passionate about all of its many aspects. Please don't forget to like the video, and if you didn't, there's a less happy button down below. But you wouldn't want to click that and do bad things to me now, would you? Please share this video everywhere, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Okay, bye-bye.